We'll turn now to Kent Miller of Michigan State, who is going to talk to us about entrepreneurship and practical theology.
Why are you interested in faith and entrepreneurship? And the previous presenters have already introduced what's really compelling for most of us in this field, which is that we see relationships between entrepreneurship and faith, and the causal directions in those relationships can run both ways. And so, within the context of the phenomenon of entrepreneurship, we're specifically interested in how does faith come into play within that phenomenon. Now, early on in my career, I didn't have much time to bring a faith perspective into the work that I was doing. But as I advanced in my career, I started to think more about why I was interested in phenomena such as religious organizations. I had written a paper on the competitive strategies of religious organizations, and it was nice to get that published in Strategic Management Journal. But I recognized something more about myself, which is I wanted to bring my perspective as a person of faith into my research. And so I began to ask this question, how exactly do I do that? How can I do research as a person of faith? And as other presenters in our conference thus far today have already begun to reveal a bit of their own identity as persons of faith, that was the same perspective with which I was grappling and wondering how exactly do I do that in the context of studying management, studying organizations. And I came across this concept of practical theology, or what I might more broadly term reflective believing. And reflective believing evaluates a contemporary situation and explores ways to understand and respond from a religious or spiritual faith perspective. And so, what I recognized in the literature on practical theology or reflective believing was that it began to give me an orientation for some methods that would help to begin to do some research where I could actually incorporate my faith perspective, not as a factor in terms of the phenomena that I was studying, but actually in the perspective that I was bringing to study that phenomenon. Now, what does that look like in practice? Looks like something such as this that we have in traditional research when we're often talking about research methods, we're looking at the relationship between theory and data. And recognizing that those two are mutually informing. And so we're using theory to generate hypotheses, to look into empirical settings, and likewise, the empirical settings and the results of those studies can inform the progress in our theorizing. The notion of reflective believing brings in this third element as an explicit component of our research method, and that's the component of faith. And so now we're interested in how does faith inform the methods? How does it inform the data? How does faith inform the theorizing that we're doing? And Michael Conger in his presentation earlier recognized that also what's coming out of this can actually change my faith. That is, there can be progress from a faith or spiritual formation perspective in the doing of such research. So where my faith is coming into play. And so this began to open up some new possibilities for me to think about research, not just as a dialogue between theory and data, but actually as a trialogue in which faith can be brought explicitly, not into just the phenomenon that I'm studying, but actually the perspective that I'm bringing and I'm reflecting from that faith-based perspective in the work that I'm doing as a researcher. Well, subsequent to that, I started to ask another question regarding the application of reflective believing within the context of a research community. And that question had to do with okay, if I begin to work from a faith-based perspective, and if other people around me within this research community do the same, how do we actually engage with one another? And how does the overall theorizing and the field as a whole progress? Okay, so this was a subsequent question, which was to say, I'm not just pursuing research from a faith-based perspective on an individual basis. I'm actually a part of this research community, and there are other people of faith, and we aren't necessarily sharing the same faith, but can we nevertheless work together and have a dialogue together regarding the phenomenon that is of interest to us? And so the next step in my own progression in terms of thinking about methods was to explore the role of interfaith dialogue, which affords learning opportunities as participants discover and grapple with divergent perspectives and practices across faiths. What does that look like in practice for researchers? Looks like the following. That is, interfaith dialogue has to do with individuals coming from these distinct faith perspectives, and those faith perspectives do have implications for the kinds of theory and the methods that they're pursuing in their research endeavors. Ultimately, we are interested in a shared phenomenon. So in our case, we're talking about entrepreneurship, or the role of faith in entrepreneurship, the relationship between those. And the idea here is that we can come from this from distinct faith perspectives, and so we can have Buddhists and Hindus and Christians and Jews and other faiths, traditional religions or spiritualities that reflect the personal identities and the faith traditions of the various researchers within this community. And in working from those faith perspectives, presumably we're gaining some unique insight into the nature of the phenomenon. We're deploying theories and methods that may be faith informed likewise, but ultimately the notion of progress as a field has to do with this common interest that we share around a phenomenon. And we're making progress collectively through these distinct perspectives, through allowing the diversity of this community to work in our favor in terms of understanding the empirical phenomenon of interest. And so this has been my own pilgrimage, my own journey in terms of research methods and growing in understanding around how do I actually bring my faith into my research endeavors. And I want to commend to you some articles that I have written in this regard. So those of you that may have an interest in pursuing this topic further, here are four papers that I have written. The first paper in 2005 was really to give myself as well as other researchers the permission that we often don't have to bring ourselves into our own research, that research is inherently a personal process. And I grew in conviction about that by reading Michael Polanyi's work on the philosophy of science. And so the 2005 piece is about methods and bringing ourselves into our own research. The 2015 piece, which was the basis of the title of this talk, is organizational research as practical theology. So what does it mean to use this reflective believing process, reflecting on our faith within the context of the research that we do? And then the other two pieces have to do with interfaith dialogue, how we can accomplish that within the field of academic research, and the problem of fundamentalism and the potential that we would have of cutting ourselves off from one another in dialogue, and how do we overcome that within scholarly discourse, and in particular for this group as we think about studying organizations, startups, new ventures, etc. So that's some of my work. And for those of you that are interested in the questions that I've just posed to you about how do you bring your faith into the work that you're doing, these may be some methodological pieces that would be of assistance to you. Finally, let me just add that you can reach me here in the management department. I'm the chairperson here at Michigan State University in the Broad College of Business. And my email address, millerk@broad.msu.edu. Would welcome hearing from those of you that are interested in pursuing these matters. I have shared my PowerPoint deck with Corey, and so he's welcome to share that out, or others of you, if you want to contact me, likewise, we can share that information.
Kent, I'm so grateful. I love the framing, and yeah, this work we do is and can be practical theology. So I'm grateful to you.